Within the dense forests of southwestern Vermont lies an area shrouded in silence and mystery known as the Bennington Triangle. This region, centered around Glastenbury Mountain, has long been a source of unease for those who dare to tread its winding paths. The wind whispers through the towering pines, carrying with it the secrets of those who vanished without a trace, leaving behind only unanswered questions and a lingering sense of dread. It is a place where the laws of nature seem to bend, and reality itself feels thin and fragile. The locals speak of the woods with a reverence born of fear, warning outsiders to stay on the marked trails, lest they become another statistic in a dark history. The history of Glastenbury is one of boom and bust, a cycle that seems to have left a scar upon the land itself. Once a thriving logging and industrial community, the town boasted a population that worked the charcoal kilns and sawmills with vigor. However, the resources were finite, and as the timber dwindled, so did the people, leaving behind a ghost town of rotting structures and overgrown foundations. By the late 1930s, Glastenbury had become a desolate place, reclaimed by the wilderness. The forest grew thick and tangled, hiding the remnants of human habitation under a carpet of moss and decay, creating a landscape that felt both ancient and hostile. It was in this atmosphere of abandonment and isolation that the first of the infamous disappearances occurred, setting the stage for a legend that would haunt the region for decades. The year was 1945, and the world was celebrating the end of a global conflict. But in the quiet woods of Vermont, a new kind of terror was beginning to take root. The transition from a bustling industrial hub to a silent wilderness seemed to invite something dark into the void. People began to whisper about lights in the sky and strange sounds echoing off the mountain slopes. But nothing could prepare them for the reality of vanishing people. Middie Rivers was a man who knew the woods better than anyone else in the area, having spent his life navigating the rugged terrain of the Green Mountains. At 74 years old, he was an experienced hunting guide, trusted by locals and visitors alike to lead them safely through the wilderness. On November 12, 1945, Rivers led a group of 4 hunters into the area around Glastenbury Mountain. The day was crisp and clear, perfect for hunting, and the group was in high spirits as they made their way back to camp. Rivers walked ahead of the group, confident in his path and his knowledge of the land. As the group approached their campsite near Long Trail Road, Rivers stepped out of sight for just a moment near a stream crossing. The hunters behind him expected to see him emerging on the other side or waiting for them by the camp entrance. However, when they reached the spot where he should have been, there was no sign of the experienced guide. The woods were silent save for the rustling of leaves and the distant call of a crow. They called out his name, expecting a gruff response or a wave of his hand. But only their own echoes returned to them. Panic began to set in as the hours passed, and the sun dipped below the horizon, casting long shadows across the forest floor. An experienced woodsman like Rivers did not simply get lost, especially in an area he knew like the back of his hand. A search party was organized quickly, comprising seasoned locals and law enforcement officers who combed the area with grim determination. They scoured the stream bank and the surrounding thickets, looking for a broken twig or a footprint that might indicate where he had gone. But the ground seemed to have swallowed him whole, leaving no trace of his passage. The only clue discovered during the extensive search was a single unspent rifle cartridge found in a stream bed. It was a chilling find, suggesting that Rivers might have leaned over for a drink or perhaps dropped it in a moment of surprise. Yet there were no signs of a struggle, no blood, and no tracks leading away from the water. It was as if he had been plucked from the earth by an unseen hand. The search continued for weeks, but the mountain refused to give up its secrets, and Middie Rivers became the first of the lost souls of the Bennington Triangle. A year passed, and the unease in Bennington began to settle into a quiet caution. But the darkness was not done with the town. On December 1, 1946, a young sophomore from Bennington College named Paula Welden decided to go for a hike on the long trail. She was 18 years old, full of life and energy, dressed in a red parka that stood out brightly against the muted colors of the late autumn landscape. She set out alone, seeking solitude and the beauty of nature, not knowing that she was walking into a mystery that would captivate the nation. Paula was seen by several people that afternoon as she made her way toward the trail entrance. A local contractor gave her a ride part of the way, and others spotted her walking along the road. The last confirmed sighting was by an elderly couple who were walking about 100 yards behind her. They saw her round a bend in the trail, disappearing behind a rocky outcrop. When they reached the same spot moments later, she was gone. The trail ahead was empty, stretching out into the darkening woods, with no sign of the girl in the red coat. When Paula failed to return to her dormitory that evening, her roommate became worried and notified the college administration. A search was launched the following morning, escalating quickly into one of the largest manhunts in Vermont history. Hundreds of volunteers, soldiers, and firefighters descended upon Glastenbury Mountain, combing every inch of the rugged terrain. Aircraft soared overhead, scanning the canopy for a flash of red, while bloodhounds were brought in to track her scent. The entire community was mobilized, driven by a desperate hope to find the young student safe. Despite the massive effort, not a single shred of evidence was found. No footprint, no piece of clothing, and no witness testimony could explain where Paula had gone after rounding that bend. the dogs tracked her scent to a certain point on the trail, and then simply stopped acting confused and agitated, as if the trail had evaporated into thin air. Theories abounded, ranging from a secret lover to a fall into a hidden crevasse, but nothing could be substantiated. Paula Welden had vanished as completely as Middie Rivers before her. The father of Paula Welden was a prominent architect, and he used his resources to keep the investigation alive for months. He criticized the local authorities for their lack of organization and brought in private investigators to follow up on leads. Sightings of a girl matching her description poured in from all over the country, but each one turned out to be a dead end. The case garnered national attention, putting a spotlight on the strange occurrences in Bennington. But the attention brought no answers, only more speculation and fear. 3 years passed, and the people of Bennington tried to move on, though the mountains loomed over the town like a silent threat. Then in 1949, the impossible happened again, but this time in a manner that defied all logic. James Tedford, a veteran of the military, was returning to the old soldiers' home in Bennington after visiting relatives in St. Albans. He boarded a bus for the long journey south, sitting amongst other passengers. As the vehicle wound its way through the darkened highways of Vermont, witnesses on the bus confirmed that Tedford was in his seat at the last stop before Bennington. The bus did not make any other stops, and the driver kept a steady pace toward the destination. Yet when the bus pulled into the terminal in Bennington, James Tedford was gone. His luggage remained in the luggage rack above his seat, and a bus timetable lay open on the empty seat where he had been sitting. It was a locked room mystery, on wheels, a disappearance that seemed physically impossible within the confines of a moving vehicle. The other passengers were baffled, unable to explain how a man could vanish from a crowded bus without anyone noticing. There was no commotion, no sound of a window opening, and no shout for help. Tedford had simply ceased to exist between 1 mile marker and the next. The authorities were stumped, unable to form even a plausible theory. Was it a mass hallucination, or something far more sinister at play? The disappearance of James Tedford added a layer of surreal horror to the growing legend of the Bennington Triangle. The pattern of disappearances accelerated the following year, bringing tragedy to a young family. On October 12, 1958, year-old Paul Jepson accompanied his mother in a truck to a dump near the mountain. His mother left him in the cab of the truck, telling him to stay put while she tended to some pigs nearby. She was gone for less than an hour, working within earshot of the vehicle. When she returned, the truck was empty, and her son was nowhere to be found. Panic gripped the mother as she searched the immediate area, screaming her son's name into the indifferent woods. The boy was wearing a bright red jacket, similar to the one worn by Paula Welden, a detail that sent shivers through the community when it was reported. A massive search party was organized immediately, with hundreds of men forming lines to sweep the forest. They hoped that a young child could not have gone far in such a short time. But the woods of Glastenbury had other plans. Bloodhounds were brought in to pick up the boy's scent. The dogs found a trail and followed it confidently toward the highway. But then they lost it abruptly at a specific spot on the road. It was as if Paul had been lifted into a vehicle or carried away by something that did not touch the ground. The trail went cold, and despite days of searching, no trace of the boy was ever found. The story of the boy in the red jacket became a cautionary tale whispered to children to keep them from wandering too far. Just 16 days after Paul Jepson vanished, the Bennington Triangle claimed its next victim in perhaps the most baffling case of all. Frieda Langer, a 53-year-old woman experienced in hiking and camping, was out with her cousin on Glastenbury Mountain. They were familiar with the area and were enjoying a brisk autumn hike near the Somerset Reservoir. During the walk, Frieda slipped and fell into a stream, soaking her clothes in the icy water. Frieda told her cousin to wait for her while she ran back to their campsite to change into dry clothes. It was a short distance, a walk she had done many times before, and it should have taken no more than 10 minutes. Her cousin waited, patiently watching the path where she had disappeared. Time ticked by, and the minutes turned into an hour. Concern grew into alarm, and the cousin retraced the path back to the camp, only to find that Frieda had never arrived. Another massive search operation was launched, involving aircraft helicopters and hundreds of volunteers. The area around the reservoir was searched extensively with meticulous care. Every bush was checked, and every hollow log was inspected. They searched for 2 weeks, covering the ground again and again, until they were certain that no body lay hidden in that section of the woods. Frieda Langer had vanished just like the others, leaving behind a baffled community and a terrified family. 7 months later, the mystery of Frieda Langer took a grotesque turn. On May 12, 1951, her body was discovered in an open area of tall grass near the reservoir. The location was shocking because it was an area that had been searched thoroughly by the rescue teams just months prior. The grass was not tall enough to hide a body from the searchers who had combed that specific spot. It was as if her body had been placed there long after the search had concluded. The condition of the body only deepened the mystery due to the long exposure to the elements and wildlife. The cause of death could not be determined. There were no obvious signs of foul play, but the circumstances of her discovery were impossible to explain rationally. How could a body appear in an open field 7 months after vanishing, in a place that had been searched by hundreds of men? The discovery brought no closure, only a chilling realization that the mountain was playing a dark game. These 5 disappearances, occurring between 1945 and 1950, form the core of the Bennington Triangle legend. They share disturbing similarities, specifically the proximity to Glastenbury Mountain, the time of year being late autumn or early winter, and the utter lack of clues left behind. It is as if a window opens for a brief period, allowing something to reach out and take those who are nearby before snapping shut again, leaving the world unchanged. But for the absence of a soul, theories about the area range from the plausible to the paranormal. Some suggest that a serial killer was operating in the area during those years, using the rugged terrain to hide his crimes. However, the lack of bodies and the specific circumstances of cases like James Tedford make this theory difficult to maintain. A killer cannot abduct a man from a moving bus or make a body appear months later in a searched field without leaving some trace of their presence. Others look to the history of the land for answers, pointing to Native American legends that warned against the area. It is said that the local tribes considered Glastenbury Mountain to be cursed land, a place where the 4 winds met, and where the ground should not be trodden. They used the mountain only for burial grounds, believing that the spirits there were restless and hostile to the living. This ancient lore adds a layer of spiritual weight to the modern tragedies, suggesting a curse that spans centuries. Local folklore also speaks of the Bennington monster, a large hairy creature said to roam the woods. Sightings of a wild man or a beast have been reported since the 19th century, often described as over 6 feet tall and covered in dark hair. While most dismiss these stories as tall tales born of fear, some wonder if a primal predator could be responsible for snatching people so quickly and silently. The sheer density of the forest could certainly hide such a creature from prying eyes. The possibility of natural anomalies has also been raised. The geography of the Bennington Triangle is unique, with erratic wind patterns and strange acoustic properties. Hunters have reported hearing voices that seem to come from nowhere, or seeing visual distortions in the air. Could there be a geological phenomenon that disorients travelers, causing them to wander into lethal traps like hidden sinkholes or old mine shafts that have been covered by decades of undergrowth? Despite the passage of time, the Bennington Triangle remains a place of quiet dread. The town of Glastenbury is still a ghost town, officially having a population of less than 10 people. The woods have reclaimed the roads, and the cellars of the old houses now serve as dens for wild animals. Hikers still venture into the long trail drawn by the beauty of the Green Mountains, but few do so without a knowledge of the history that permeates the soil. Those who walk the trails today often report a feeling of being watched, a prickling sensation on the back of the neck that urges them to keep moving. The silence of the forest can feel oppressive, as if the trees themselves are holding their breath waiting for something to happen. It is a psychological weight that presses down on the mind, reminding visitors that they are guests in a domain that does not welcome them. The disappearances stopped as abruptly as they began leaving a gap in history that has never been filled. No confessions were ever made, and no new evidence has surfaced to shed light on the fate of the missing five. They remain frozen in time, suspended in the amber of local legend, their names etched into the collective memory of Vermont. The lack of resolution ensures that the story never truly ends, keeping the wound fresh in the minds of the community. In the end, the Bennington Triangle stands as a testament to the unknown forces that exist in the margins of our world. It challenges our reliance on logic and evidence, forcing us to confront the possibility that some things cannot be explained. The forest keeps its secrets well, burying the truth under layers of leaves and snow, protecting the mystery from those who seek to unravel it. As night falls over Glastenbury Mountain, the shadows lengthen and merge into a solid wall of darkness. The wind picks up, howling through the valleys with a voice that sounds almost human. For those sitting by their fires in the safety of their homes, the story is a chilling tale to be told in hushed tones. But for those who stand at the edge of the woods, looking into the abyss, the Bennington Triangle is a very real reminder that we are never truly alone in the dark. The legacy of Middie Rivers, Paula Welden, James Tedford, Paul Jepson, and Frietta Langer lives on, not in the answers found, but in the silence that followed. Their stories serve as a grim warning to respect the wild and to acknowledge the boundaries of our understanding. The mountain stands tall and indifferent, a silent sentinel, guarding the resting place of the lost, waiting for the next time the window might open. We are left with a lingering dread, a subtle fear that whispers to us when we step off the beaten path. It is the fear of the unknown, the fear of vanishing without a trace, and the fear that the Bennington Triangle is merely sleeping, waiting for the right moment to awaken once more. The woods are deep and lovely, but they are also dark and full of secrets that perhaps are not meant for us to find.